Chris Lamping here, PHRA's Executive Director. Welcome to PHRA's podcast, P4, People, Purpose, Passion, Pittsburgh. P4 is brought to you by our members and sponsors, Lattus and the University of Pittsburgh, Executive MBA programs, and the Center for Executive Education. We appreciate their support, and we'll hear from them throughout the podcast, beginning with the University of Pittsburgh Executive MBA programs and Center for Executive Education. In Episode 9, Pete Schramm and James Roddey discuss how discipline, accountability, responsibility, and leadership are vital skills to being successful in business.
All right, Mr. Roddey, we're excited to bring you on to the P4 podcast today. Thank you so much for your time. This is all about learning more about you and the experiences that have fueled your life over the past few years, couple of decades, and the impact that you've made, not just to the people in the greater Pittsburgh area, not just to the United States, but folks from all around the world. And, the couple of conversations we've had over the last few months and years, I've learned so much from you, and I'm excited to share more of this insight, perspectives, and experience with everybody else listening. So thanks so much for joining us today, Mr. Roddey. First question is, who are you? And how'd you get here today?
Well, I'm an 89-year-old entrepreneur. I was in business for a number of years in large companies, a lot of startup companies. I was president of several companies, been on 7 or 8 public company boards, and I have been involved I had a 30-year involvement with politics. So I have a good feeling of the difference between politics and business. I came to Pittsburgh promising my wife we would stay 5 years, and we've been here 43 and wouldn't live anywhere else.
Love it. So from politics and making Pittsburgh your home, let's talk a little bit more about some of those other roles that you were in at those organizations. And also, I think there's a small detail that you're leaving out about the beginning of your career, right? Maybe almost, getting to the Olympics and traveling the world, supporting the military. You did some really, really cool things early on in your career. Can you kind of talk us through the earlier phase and how that influenced some of the professional steps?
Well, my biggest influencer was my track coach in college, who when I was planning to be the captain of the team in my senior year, he called me in and said, I don't want you to be the captain of the team. I want Bill Taylor to be. And I said, but Bill Taylor's a walk-on. He's never won a race. He's never been a star on the team at all. On the other hand, I've won all of these races and championships, and I've been to the Olympic trials, and I was crushed. And he said, well, the reason is that Bill Taylor you're exactly right. He's not very good. He's a walk-on, but he is the best he can be. He came here with no talent, and he's worked hard enough to make the team and to at least participate. You, on the other hand, had a lot of talent, and you wasted it. You played through most of the things. You did well. You had a great career, but you could have been much better. You could have gone to the Olympics, and you could have been a world champion, but you were not motivated enough to really work that hard and to be the best you can be. And that I was devastated, but shortly thereafter, after I graduated and went into the Marine Corps, I learned exactly what it was to be the best you can be. And I think that that's a message that everybody ought to know.
What did you do to be the best that you could be? I think
I
it's
worked
really
hard at it.
important.
I
Yeah.
love my job in the Marine Corps. I love the culture of the Marines. And I did everything I could to be as good or better than anyone else at whatever I did, whether it was the obstacle course or some sort of exercise, jumping off of, rappelling down mountains, uh, going through 30-mile hikes. I always wanted to be the best.
I love it. And as you transitioned throughout the Marine Corps, what were some of the different responsibilities you had, and how did those prepare you for those first steps out of the Corps and in the professional world?
Well, I think the discipline and the accountability are very important. I think if everyone could could go to the military, and have that 1 or 2 years of discipline and learning chain of command and responsibility and leadership. All of those lessons are great. I was a platoon commander. I was captain of commander of a amphibious recon team. I was a liaison officer with the Turkish Army in joint exercises with the Marines and the Turkish Army in the Mediterranean. I went on a rescue mission to Bulgaria when it was behind the Iron Curtain to rescue some downed pilots. I met that pilot years later, and he told me how important that moment was when he saw me the first time, and so I realized that what I was doing was affecting positively with other people.
I love that story. And he climbed up a few ranks in the military, didn't he? The individual that you saved.
Yeah, well, I think when I met him, he was first in the rescue. He was a captain, then he was a major, and I think I followed his career. At least I think he finally got his star and became a general.
Yeah. And imagine if he, wasn't saved. So that's pretty remarkable. Thank you again for your service. As we, kind of take the next step in this conversation towards some of the top trends that we're seeing impacting businesses in our region and around the country. You talked about discipline, accountability, responsibility, and leadership that you learned from the military background. But Jim, what's the biggest trend that you're seeing impacting our workforce today?
Well, there are two. Number one, I think, is the fact that a lot of people are not working for whatever reason. They're deciding not to go back to their original job, and everyone is. If you drive down the street, every business you pass, there's a big sign said "Now hiring." I saw one that said hiring for all positions. So I went in and applied for the ownership, and but they said that wasn't included. But it's very difficult, particularly in the service business, where you have to you're running a restaurant or something. It's just very difficult, and it's hurting businesses. And the other trend is working from home. A lot of people after COVID got used to working from home, decided that they like that. And now people they want to do that. They want to work virtually. Technology allows them to do that. But you have to be even more disciplined and more dedicated if you're doing that. And I personally don't like the idea of working from home. I believe that the culture that you have in a company, being able to interface with your fellow employees, seeing them on a daily basis, talking about ideas, talking about things you're doing, what they're doing, I think that's invaluable. And so maybe a blend of virtual and coming to the office a couple of days a week where you can plan to have that relationship. is much better than full-time virtual.
It's interesting how your point changed a little bit and kind of saw how it developed. You said, I don't like, working from home. And then you're like, well, we kind of have to meet people where we are. The world's changed, and how insightful it is that you're able to say, hey, if you can budge, I can budge. Let's meet in the middle, hybrid, right? Got to be in the office a little bit. I get it. If you want to work from home, that's okay. Let's carry both of them forward.
Well, it's about change. And the most important thing to learn in business is that everything is going to change. And to be successful, you need to not only accept change, you need to embrace it. And you need to be a person that can lead change, that can manage change, because change is absolutely inevitable.
Accept, embrace, and lead change. I like it. Let's go back. You talked a little bit about culture. Whenever you were in your 30 years in politics, and maybe we hone in a little bit more on the county executive position, what did you do to improve culture? Maybe some of the activities that you did with the team, some actions you took. What did it look like?
Well, it was very difficult because I started with 7,000 employees and I had to get rid of about 500 of them. And so that was not the most popular thing. Also, I was a Republican in a courthouse that was 92% Democrats. So they all were trying to figure out how to make me fail. And so it was difficult, but I purposely worked with every department and tried to do whatever I could to improve it. But I involved the leaders of those departments. And so I teamed with each one of them to make the department as good as it could be. And we had some huge successes with that. And people began to realize that I was not partisan at all. I think while I was a county executive, I hired 2/3 Democrats and 1/3 Republicans, and that's the registration in Allegheny County. So I really look for the best people. And every time that even we had to get rid of a lot of people, but I explained why. And I think when I finished that explanation, people recognized that they were better off. The fact that these people were not there anymore. And
starting with why. Go ahead.
And I became a listener. I've always believed that a leader has to be a communicator. You can't lead without being a great communicator. Gandhi was a great leader, and George Patton was a great leader. You could not have two most dissimilar personalities, but the one common thing that they had is that they both could communicate, sometimes in different ways, but you have to. And if you really want to be a communicator, you have to understand that by definition, communication is 50% listening. If you hear the word communicate, the picture that comes to your mind is speaking or writing or presenting. Well, all of that's good, but if you're not listening, you're not going to be a very good communicator.
I think that's something that we can all jog our memory on. A little bit more listening, active listening, right? Not just being present and not just kind of letting the information come to us, right? How are we able to take it?
You have to let people know that you were listening. The best thing is after a conversation with someone, after a session with someone, drop them a note about something they said that you think is worthwhile, so that they know that you were listening to them and they know that you valued their opinion.
Yeah. So starting off with 7,000 employees and cutting some of them, the odds are against you. Kind of the way the courthouse is broken down. but you brought the people together and did a lot of good things for the region. And you mentioned that you continually worked with the facts and started with why. And throughout this process, you probably had to hire a lot of people. About how many people did you bring into the county into different roles? And talk to me a little bit more about that hiring and onboarding process.
Probably 200 or 300
Okay.
that I brought in. And the hiring is the hardest thing that you will do in business, because your people are the single most important asset that you have. And if you're in a small company, the smaller the company, the more important the culture and the hiring is. If you have 5 employees, one's not very good, that's 20% of your workforce. If you've got 10,000 employees and 100 of them aren't very good, that's 1%. So it doesn't really affect you as much. So smaller the companies, the more difficult it is. And hiring, I've set some rules about hiring. I like to hire veterans because they have accepted responsibility and they know discipline, and they've had that training that you need in business. Secondly, I like to hire people that have worked their way through college. Now, I didn't. I went to college on a full scholarship, but when I meet with or lecture students, the best people I can meet with are the night students in grad school, because they're working all day and then going to school at night. They want to accomplish something. They are motivated. And that's the kind of people that you want to hire. You want to hire people also that have had a successful track record. If someone has had changing jobs every year or two, that's not a good sign. I had a mentor that told me that he never hired a man that smoked a pipe, because he'll spend more time trying to light his pipe and keep it lit than he will working. and I had all sorts of peculiarities. One man didn't want to hire anyone that wore a bow tie. But the main thing is, what have you accomplished? Have you grown in the jobs that you've been in? Have you been advanced in those jobs? Were you successful in those jobs? And if they were, they're not going to suddenly change when they come to work for you. They're going to be exactly the way they were. And so that's more important than the resume. That's more important than the background. It's success.
I love it. And we think about hiring for attitude, and you can teach the aptitude over time. I was recently at an event with the Pitt IEE, and they brought in a speaker from Harvard Business School, and he talked about just that, hiring nice people. And the case study that he put together was around the kind of tragedy at the Taj Mahal Hotel about 11 years ago. And in this tragedy, 100%, so, terrorists came into the hotel and they started, shooting up and causing a ruckus, right? 100% of the staff stayed there and they supported. And then we dug into it a little bit further and we understood, okay, what's the culture like there, right? What do they do for their people? And what we found is that the leadership there prioritizes people more than most organizations. And it all starts with the hiring process, because if you have bad in, you have bad out. And in the hospitality space, the service industry, oh my gosh, if you have unhappy guests, if you have unhappy customers, you're not going to grow. They're not going to come back. And even worse, they're probably going to tell their friends that it wasn't that good. So hiring nice people, hiring great people. I've done multiple vet hirings over the years, and I think it can be great and to, lift others up and again, thank them for their service is pretty phenomenal. So I love hiring the right people. What happens if we don't hire the right people? What happens if they get through the cracks? I've been wrong before, right? What do we do then?
Well, first of all, you don't let it go too long when you recognize someone's not pulling their weight. What we typically do as managers, and it's probably the biggest mistake that all managers make, is that they have someone who's not performing well, and they'll call them in and have a talk with them, and they'll have put them on probation even, and say, you've got to show me that you can improve over the next 90 days or something. The truth is, people rarely change. They rarely get any better. And so you really need, when you recognize that, you have to know that the people around them knew about the fact that they weren't good long before you did. And so they when you let someone go that's not working, they appreciate that. That sends a signal that that you are watching and knowing what's going on. So, but if you have motivated someone, done everything you can to motivate them, if you have properly trained them, if you had given them all of the tools that they needed to be successful, and they still haven't performed, and you have to let them go, you are at fault. It's not anybody else's fault but yours, because in the final analysis, if you did all of that, you shouldn't have hired them in the first place. And I've heard people that brag about how many people they fired. That doesn't impress me.
It's interesting how you talk about accountability to those on your team, you owning the responsibility when you're in a leadership role, and the discipline to do it at the right time. Those are four of the things you talked about whenever you were going through the Marine Corps experience earlier. So it's all tying together, and these core principles go with us throughout the entire lives that we have, right? Personally and professionally. So some of those leaders that are going into some of the difficult conversations, maybe we take this two different ways, right? Think about a leader at a small company, right? Maybe under 50 employees. And then think about a leader at a large company. What are some of the tips that you can give them, some actions they can take today in this hybrid world to improve, their employees? If I have somebody who's okay, what can I do to get him to great, or her to great? And some other things to improve culture, right? It's tough times, but what are some of the things we can do? Let's start off with a small company, leader in a small company.
Well, I think you have to be honest with everyone. They have to respect you, for they may not like you. They may think that you've made some of the decisions you've made were not the best, but you've got to be honest with them. You've got to tell them what's happening and where they stand and where the company stands all the time when you're in a small company, because everybody's got to pull their load. You've got to let them know that you care about them, and that they are valuable. It's much more difficult when you start with a great big company, and then you have to do the same thing, but with leaders within the company that lead smaller groups, and hope that they will pass on that same ethic of listening and being honest, and you really have to preach that all through the management ranks, because people, when you have 40 people working for you, the combined brain power of the 40, they know a lot more about the work going on than you do. And so it's those key managers throughout large companies, that's where a lot of concentration has to be.
Sounds like this takes a lot of time. How do you prioritize, meeting with everybody and taking time to interact and engage with all of them. Did that, really cut into your schedule? Did you have longer days whenever you're trying to, live this out?
Of course, in a large company like the county, I had that plus the political issues that I had to deal with. And I told the story that I was out 23 nights in a row and didn't have an opportunity to get home for dinner. And 19 of those nights they served chicken. And I got home finally on the 24th night, and as you might imagine, my wife had fixed chicken. And so I stood up and talked for 20 minutes. I introduced my dog. It was just a reflex, but it is difficult. You really have to dedicate yourself and be organized. You have to know what you're going to do every day. You have to have a good schedule, and you have to have people around you that help you do that. There's no substitute for good people. Good people can make a bad plan work. Bad people can't make a good plan work.
I love that. I've never heard it put that way. No substitute for good people. Bad people can make a good plan work. Good people can make a bad plan work. There we go.
and bad people can't make a good plan work.
Yeah, I love it. Start with the people. You talk a little bit more about the discipline in the organization. Did you have any kind of habits or routines, right? You wake up in the morning, what did that look like for you? What were some of the, routines and habits that you had in place that fueled some of your success?
4:30 in the morning, get up, exercise until 5:30 or so, have breakfast, be in the office no later than 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Have a list of things to do that you prepared the day before that are prioritized, and start going down that list. And so I even stage phone calls by time zones so that I could stay after work and call into the West Coast and other places that I needed to talk to people. So you really have to work at it, and having a good scheduler and having a good assistant that will keep the schedule for you and tell you where you have to be. A lot of times I would be out somewhere and I'd call and I'd say, tell me where I'm supposed to go next.
Yeah. And it's probably to another chicken dinner, right?
Yes.
You've talked to me a lot over the last few months around innovation and thinking outside the box. And leaders around our region and around the country and around the world have had to think outside the box a lot. Share a couple of stories, maybe one or two, around instances where you've seen people do things differently to achieve different results. Doesn't have to necessarily be COVID related, but instances where we have this problem, maybe a business is stagnant, stale. How can we look at it differently? Maybe bring in outside perspectives. We're going to do things differently to achieve things that we haven't done before.
Ted Turner. If you really want to study a smart entrepreneur, Ted Turner is a good place to start. When I first met Ted, he was 21 years old. His father had just sold his company and committed suicide. And Ted had inherited the company, but it had been sold. So he fought the sale, saying that I want to keep this company. And my father was not in his right mind when he signed the contract. And obviously, committing suicide is pretty proof of that. And so the sellers or the buyers of the company said, look, a court case is not going to be good PR for us. So let's just back away, tell him it's okay. And 6 months later, he doesn't know how to run anything. And 6 months later, we'll be able to come in and get the company again. And the truth is, he started with that. He hired me. to be the manager or to the president of his company. And he was the thinker. Ted Turner was one of the smartest people I've ever known, and he could not manage a snow cone machine. He was a terrible manager, but he was a genius when it came to seeing the future of the business he was in and being way ahead of everyone else. He came in one day and said, "Jim, we're going to buy the Atlanta Braves." I said, "Are you crazy? We know nothing about sports teams. We know nothing about baseball. We're struggling just to get the company reorganized and make it profitable. And you want to buy the Braves?" I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, "Well, we just got this television station. It was an independent. We didn't have a network. And every minute of programming, we had to either produce or buy." He said, "The Braves play 162 games. We can put them on the air with a pregame and postgame show, and we can save $6 million. I've done the math. We can save $6 million a year by buying the Braves and putting them on our TV station." And it was a genius. We were the first station ever to go on a satellite. I said, "What are you doing with a satellite?" He said, "We'll send our signal all over the country." I said, "Well, who cares about a TV station in Atlanta, Georgia?" He said, "It doesn't matter. If we get a 2% share in 500 towns, that's saleable. We can get an advertiser that will buy that." And so he was always thinking ahead. He bought the MGM film library for $1.5 billion, and we all laughed and thought he's finally done it. He was like a guy at the poker table, never pulling a chip off, just let it ride. And he was fearless, absolutely fearless. He failed a bunch of times, and it didn't matter to him. He ignored it. He went right on with his next venture, but he was a genius. And right now, the film library that he bought is probably worth $150 billion. And so I greatly admired him.
Wow. That's a new one. It's pretty remarkable, right? Doing things that, haven't been done before and beginning with the end in mind. What are we trying to achieve? Is it more profits? Is it breaking into new spaces?
He wanted to make money.
Yeah.
But he wanted to just to be known as a successful entrepreneur. He called me one day, and I was in Pittsburgh by that time, and he was in Atlanta, and he said, "Jim," we had a conversation for a while, and then he said, "Jim, do you know I'm worth $500 million? Of course, today it's several $billion." I said, "Is that why you called?" He said, "No, I called to let you know that I had made $400 million of it doing things you advised me not to do." And so I realized that my role was running the company and his role was the vision.
Wow. So that's the perspective from somebody at the top of the food chain and has had, a lot of opportunity to influence, the corporation and the businesses at a higher level. Let's switch gears and go down to the foundational pieces. Folks that are coming into the workforce that are just joining a company, just joining an organization, whether it's small, medium, or large. What tip would you give them as they step into this new role?
Well, first of all, you want to work at some place where you can be proud of the company and what they do. If you're just there to get a paycheck, but if you believe in what they do, their product, their culture, then that's a good sign. Also, you want to go in a company where there's an opportunity for you to grow. And you want to go in a company that offers a training program. I've seen companies that new salesman will come in and they'll say, hand them a phone book, a yellow page book, and say, here's your target list. Go out and sell. That doesn't work very well. But it's I think being proud of the company that you work for, having a training program, and having a path that you can grow. I think those are the three most important things.
Yeah, proud growth and training program. I'll let you know that we added a couple more people to our team over the last few weeks, and they are proud to be here. There is a clear path for growth, and we put the training program in place. So, according to the Mr. Roddey, onboarding success tips, we're headed in the right direction. So, Jim, thank you for these insights up to this point. We're going to go into the kind of fast fire, phase of this. You ready to go in?
Sure.
All right. So the first question, if you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
Get a better education. I came out of college. I was an English and speech major. I couldn't read a balance sheet, couldn't read an operating statement, knew nothing about business. And so I had to learn on the job. Fortunately, I had mentors that helped me with that, but that was the biggest mistake I made.
Okay. A favorite quote that you share with other people, something that really resonates with you?
I think General Patton, when he said, lead, follow, or get out of the way.
I like that one. Patton's come up a few times here. All right. You talked a lot about, working early and working a lot and working hard. What'd you do for fun outside of work? How did you balance? Was there one activity or one hobby that you had?
When I was working, not in the county exec, but working in companies, whenever I left the office, whether it was 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 8 o'clock, I put all the office out of my mind, and I went home, and I didn't think about it until I came the next morning. I could do that because I had a plan. I had a list of things to do. I was organized. And so I had that luxury of being able to just having family time that was very valuable. Then weekends, I like to sail. And so I'd go sailing. And sailing is a great, you have to think what you're doing. You have to be aware of things around you, the wind, the currents, and so it takes your mind off of everything else. It was good to have this press a clear button for a few hours and do that.
Sailing into success. I like it. We'll have to get out on a boat sometime soon. All right, last one is a book recommendation that you have.
Well, I'm not going to recommend a book. There are many books on leadership. There are many books on success, and I recommend them all. Read as many as you can. I have, but I would recommend that every day you read the Wall Street Journal. Read the front page. Read the articles. You often let the whole world go by when you're starting a company or trying to grow a company or trying to do something. And the Wall Street Journal, if you'll spend 30 minutes going through the paper every morning and reading it, it'll keep you up to date on art, culture, business, sports, everything you need to know that's going on in the world. And that's valuable.
And it seems that it's worked. Hearing from a almost 90-year-old entrepreneur that's been around the world a couple of times and seen so many different experiences. Jim, thanks for sharing all these insights with us today, sharing these stories with us today. We look forward to continuing the conversation and continue hearing from you as we keep building this community. And to everybody listening, thanks for joining this session of P4 today. Jim, I'm going to hand it back over to you for any final closing thoughts and words as we wrap this episode up.
Well, I want to thank you for having me, and I want to thank the emphasis on human resources. That used to be an obscure office somewhere in the basement, or in the attic. But today, in the last few years, and it's become one of the more important parts of business. And they finally have recognized people are your best asset, and that's where it all begins, with HR.
People do matter. I love it. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
In a world where businesses are coming to terms with the demands of employee choice, solutions to improve workplace culture are crucial. Businesses of all sizes are doing everything they can to attract and retain top talent during this unprecedented time. Connection to the team, a sense of belonging, and a feeling of purpose rank high in the needs of today's work-from-anywhere society. Sound familiar? At Lattus, we understand the importance team building and positive employee-employer relationships have on the success of a workplace. Done well, top-down and peer-to-peer knowledge sharing can unlock new levels of productivity and profitability to create a culture of cohesive collaboration. Ongoing high-quality connections reduce burnout and mitigate mental health issues, more important now than ever with social isolation on the rise. Lattus is a tool to make internal employee engagement easier and much more impactful for the entire organization. Lattus is a proven, secure workplace solution that is easy to implement for organizations of all sizes. So what are you waiting for? Let's Lattus.
The PHRA P4 podcast was created to help build HR leaders through discussions with thought and business leaders on the most critical success factor of any business. It's people. If you enjoy an episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast and providing us a rating. We would love for you to take a screenshot of the episode, tag PHRA, and share it with your followers. Until next time, thank you for watching and thank you for listening.